First off, let me say I love the Star Wars franchise. The original Force Unleashed was great fun, if not slightly frustrating at times, but really had the epic sense and atmosphere. The storyline was strong and really held together, and I always wanted to play more of it. But with The Force Unleashed 2, I find myself with more critical points than positive. So let's start off. What everyone is talking about is the length of the campaign. On average, the campaign takes around 5 to 6 hours, with some time to get stuck or replay parts of the level. Compared to the first one, which took around 8 to 9 hours, I see this as a serious step down for value of money. If you're going to make a sequel, the campaign needs to be either the same length or longer, not 4 hours shorter. Also, this is topped off by a serious lack of levels, only 9 levels, each lasting around 30 to 45 minutes. That doesn't sound too bad, but most of the levels are linked together, so you're only really looking at 4 longer levels. Doesn't sound so big now, eh? The storyline is also much weaker than the first. You play it as a clone of Starkiller, the main character of the original. You are tortured by visions of Starkiller's past and his love for Juno, the ex-Empire pilot who defected to the rebellion. But what really annoys me is that I don't even have a name. I'm actually called Starkiller more than his clone. And what time is this? As a Star Wars fan, I'd like to know what is exactly happening in the galaxy around me. I mean, where even is the Emperor? The storyline is more like a DLC for the original. The replay value of the original was the decision making which was available to you, and this actually changed the storyline. I expected the same in the sequel, but there was none at all, not at least until the end, which was lackluster to say the least. Graphically, the game is very good. The animations and cutscenes are some of the best I've seen from a Star Wars game, but sadly, they didn't use it to its full potential, and that's what annoys me the most. If the game developers have the ability to create a great movie-like scene, but choose not to, that's just laziness, and as a consumer, that's the last thing I want to see. This also ties in with the sheer lack of epic scenes which the original had. Who remembers taking down the Star Destroyer with the Force alone? That was badass. The voice acting and the character presentation is good, if not average. In reality, it's just the same characters from the first one, but with a bit more confusion. You only really interact with 1 or 2 characters anyway, so they could have tried a little harder on that front. The music is obviously the same as every single Star Wars game. We have John Williams to thank for that, but sometimes you just want something a little different, don't you? The gameplay and fighting mechanics are an improvement of the original. The animations really do capture the Jedi-like movements, and with 2 lightsabers, it's almost like you're doing a war dance while killing a swarm of stormtroopers. There are 2 new Force abilities, Force Repulse, much like Maelstrom from the original, and Mind Trick, but only one of them is incorporated well into the game. I only found myself using Mind Trick for amusement purposes. If I wanted something dead, I had to do it myself. In the original, to kill larger and stronger enemies, you could go into a cutscene and button smash the correct buttons in order to kill them. This was also incorporated into boss battles and such. You still have this in Force Unleashed 2, however there is a distinct lack of variety and it becomes quite repetitive. Also, in the original, sometimes there'll be 2 different animations for the cutscenes of the same enemy. However, in Force Unleashed 2, they seem to have given up on that and only put 1 for each enemy, which really did make it repetitive. Also, there is a new ability called Rage. In this mode, you cannot take damage and your force moves and lightsaber attacks become much stronger, but with the fidgetiness of activating this and the sheer strength of you alone makes this redundant, unless you're fighting a boss or a particularly large amount of enemies, which happens very little. As like the first, you can upgrade everything you have, lightsaber damage, force moves, and saber throw. However, the first game had a long campaign and you could upgrade most of your abilities, but this one, because of the length, you pretty much find yourself only fully upgrading 1 or 2, depending on which ability you like to use the most. However, there are also a few added enemies which require more than just mindlessly hitting the buttons on your controller. These enemies do well to incorporate the new force moves and having to actually use your brain. But with the inclusion of smaller enemies, they took out the big boss battles. In total, there is about 2 big boss battles, one of which is at the end. Although the first one was very good, the scale of it and detail animation was brilliant, there's only so much it can compensate for, and 2 bosses just wasn't enough. The ending was also disappointing. I won't give anything away, but don't expect the same as the original. Or rather, expect the same, but be very disappointed at how the developers went about it. At least there was some decision making to do at the end, which does provoke a cutscene, but it didn't really feel like an achievement. The boss battle at the end of the original took me 3 or 4 attempts, and I was frustrated by the end of it, but then it really wasn't an achievement to finish it. But sadly the sequel does not provide the same satisfaction. Although a few of my criticisms are based on difficulty, there is an ability to replay each level with the same characters and abilities you have when you completed it. This allows you to grind your way to completing the game on harder difficulties, but without any RPG elements, I don't see this as any incentive to replay it. As much as I gripe about this game, I still enjoy playing it, and although the sequel was not as good as the original, it's in no way a bad game, but it was a disappointment. I give Star Wars Force Unleashed 2 a 6 out of 10.